Another episode of Amazing Arizonans, and I think it fits more with this guest than anyone else, Jason Schechterle. I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thank you, sir. Honored to be sitting here with you.
Obviously, we're going to talk about why everybody knows you in a few moments, but I want to talk about some of the things people don't know. Born and raised here, you're a Phoenician.
Yes, sir.
What did that mean to you in your career? Because I know you did 4 years in the Air Force before becoming a Phoenix cop. What was that like?
I definitely got the perspective as I got older. You know, when you're a kid, and hindsight's 20/20 for a reason. So growing up in the 70s and 80s, I knew I had it good. I didn't realize how good. And I grew up out by Phoenix International Raceway, riding horses, riding ATCs when they were legal, carrying a shotgun, going dove hunting in the Salt River with my buddies, and come home when the street lights are on, the good old days. So then I grew up, and I knew I wanted to be a cop. I knew I wanted to work here in Phoenix, but I still needed some structure and discipline. So the best place to get that, I think, is the military. And I come from an entire family of people who served in the military. And I'm talking the greatest generations that actually fought for the freedoms I have right now. So I joined the Air Force, and it did exactly what I thought it would do. I went to some great places. The first place I went to was Grand Forks, North Dakota. So realizing I wanted to go back home to Phoenix was a super easy decision after I froze up there. But did some time in Korea, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and came back when I was 22 and haven't left since.
So you enter the police force, you become a cop at Phoenix PD, and by all accounts, well respected as So what I'm trying to get at is you had a great life for you going before you were kind of thrust into the limelight with what happened to you. What was it, your attitude before that got you through what happened, or is it what formed your attitude? Because you've got the best attitude of anybody I've ever met.
Thank you. I would have to say it more formed it. I do believe that when you go through adversity, character is revealed versus developed, but resilience is not. If you want to build muscle, you go to the gym, right? The only way to build resilience, you got to go through hardships. I was one of those lucky people who didn't go through a lot of hardships. I broke a few bones playing sports growing up, but everything I wanted to achieve, I achieved. My family was healthy. Even in my late 20s, all four of my grandparents were still alive. Nobody gotten divorced. I hadn't been through anything, hadn't seen anything. So I definitely want to say it was formed after, and I know exactly how it was formed and why, but I certainly wasn't prepared, and I'm glad that I wasn't given any notice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Let's talk about when this happened to you. For the people that don't know the story, can you tell the story from the perspective of sitting in that patrol car?
Yeah, so, I was really living the dream. I was doing blue-collar work with Arizona Public Service. My life was set, married, 2 kids. And then on March 26th of 99, Mark Atkinson, Phoenix police officer, shot and killed over 30th Avenue right around Thomas, and just had a deep, deep impact on me. And I can't even, to this day, explain why it was Mark or his critical incident. These things happen all the time. But it was my aha moment, went right away. Thankfully got through the process. And, I'm looking back, I'm really proud of this, Mike, because nowadays we have a lot of openings in Phoenix PD. We're short-staffed. You can't get people to apply. Back then, I'm in the Phoenix Convention Center with 1,000 people, and they're hiring like 20. So it was really difficult, and to get it was something I was really proud of. Went to the academy, and I try to explain to people, even though I didn't know what to expect, the Air Force helped me. The academy certainly was not difficult on me, not as far as physical fitness, not as far as the testing. I loved learning criminal law and defensive tactics and how to take somebody into custody, things like that. So when I got out there, though, I was a little nervous just because all of a sudden it gets real. And you have a lot of power bestowed upon you. I mean, to be able to just walk in and out of people's homes, businesses, to take children away from their families, like, this is a serious gig. Forget for a moment the firearm. and the other things. It's just a lot
It's a
of
huge
responsibility.
responsibility.
It's huge. And I'm so happy to know, like from day one, it was very humbling. And that's, I think, what police officers need. And most of them have it. Not everybody. Most of them do. But when you're bestowed with that kind of power, you need humility. You need compassion. You need a lot of things. And they were soaking into me like a sponge. So I was trying to learn. And a lot of cops will tell you it takes a good, and I'm going to give a wide range, but a good 3 to 7 years on the streets before you can actually say you know what you're doing.
Okay.
It takes some time, right? Because
Right.
you're going to see a lot, you're going to do a lot. And I was only out there for 14 months, so I was still in the learning phase. I was still, I was thankful I just finally figured out how to listen to 15 people saying the same thing on the radio and knowing where everything was. Listening to, I'd be at home on my days off listening to my radio, trying to figure out what they just say.
Yeah.
The codes and simple things like that. Or back when you had to find addresses without a GPS, you shine a
Sure.
spotlight on a house. Not really very stealth, right? Like spotlighting
Right.
a house. Hey, where are you? But yeah, going into that 14-month, I was loving it. I was riding by myself, working great hours, working downtown Phoenix, Central City Precinct, and it couldn't have been any better.
And then that fateful night when this happened to you, taxi cab, driving about 100 miles an hour, barrels into the rear end of your patrol car. And what the flaw was that people didn't understand was the vehicles were flawed, right? That this was a time when the gas tank was exposed and they weren't inside the frame, and all that got changed after this incident happened to you and others.
Right.
But plows into you, and there happened to be a fire truck going to the same call you were going on, correct?
Correct.
So what happens?
So I'm on my way to this call, and for me, it was a dead body call. The 911 caller reported seeing a lot of blood. So just very good possibility of violent crime. So for me, and this is a call I was not supposed to answer up for. It wasn't in my area. But I answered up for it. I'm heading down eastbound on Thomas Road, and for everybody familiar with the Valley, 20th Street and Thomas, it's Phoenix Children's Hospital, Arizona Heart Institute, State Route 51. It's a very busy part of the Valley. And I stopped briefly for a red light. It takes maybe a second to clear an intersection. Just got to make sure people see me and yield. And right then is when I was hit. Yeah, he was doing 150 miles an hour. He's having an epileptic seizure. And I should have, looking back, I wish I'd have been paying attention to the Crown Vics, because in 1998, DPS officer Skip Fink was killed on the side of the 60 and McClintock. I'm sorry, 1998 was Juan Cruz. In February of 2000, Skip Fink was killed. Then you had my accident. A year later, Chandler police officer Rob Nielsen. So we were kind of ground zero. And the gas tank on the Ford Crown Victoria, Lincoln Town car, the Grand Marquis, those three cars, it's behind the rear axle. So then the safety board in Washington, D.C. says, hey, make the crush zone in the back super soft to absorb all that crazy energy, save lives. Well, yeah, great idea, but those two things don't combine. So the vulnerability of my gas tank, and listen, I've held my gas tank. It's huge. All I have is a dime-sized hole in it. But that's all it takes with all that metal coming together, sparks are flying, and it burst into flames, shot me 270 feet through the intersection, and I was going eastbound, coming northbound on the access road, was a Phoenix fire truck on their way to the same dead body call that I was going to, and they basically witnessed what had happened.
But you still were in that burning car for about 2 minutes.
Sitting, thankfully unconscious, not screaming, not freaking out, not.
So you had really
fear.
no knowledge at that point of the.
No, not at all, and that really saved my life, because probably the biggest danger when you're in a fire is the inhalation of those toxic fumes, the heat.
And the heat, burn your lungs.
I would have died so quickly. But my breathing was very peaceful because I was knocked unconscious. I do have a couple of faint memories of the chaos, and they say that being inside of a fire actually sounds like a freight train running right over the top of you. Those are some of the things I remember, but I think your body might know what it can and can't handle, and was like, yeah, I don't need any part of this. So
have you I'm sure you have, but did you talk to, and if you did, what was said with the firefighters that were on that scene? What was that like?
I talked to them at great length, but it was down the road. It took
Right.
me a while to get. They came to visit me in the hospital, and I was overcome with such emotion that I couldn't even speak. I was just crying. And fast forward, the young rookie who helped get me out of the car, he was only 22 years old at the time. He left Phoenix. I believed he moved on to another fire department in California. Two of the engineer, Rebecca Joy, and a firefighter named Darren Boyce, they're both retired now, but we still keep in close contact. We still have lunch every year on the anniversary. I still learn things that I didn't know, because we'll talk about it. It changed their lives too. What they witnessed, what they did. We're not robots, and they were thrust into this situation. And the captain, Mike Orr, unfortunately, he suffered a horrible tragedy with still an unsolved murder of his own son. And I have not seen or talked to him in a while. But not only do I say I had a fire truck of my intersection, I had the right 4 people on that truck to do their individual specific jobs and get me out of there. Yeah, like you said, about between 90 and 120 seconds from impact till extrication. Crazy.
The process of physical recovery, not emotional, not mental recovery, but physical recovery to the level you are now, had to be excruciating. And how long did it take?
It was excruciating in 2 senses. Number one, the pain is, thankfully, after all these years, I've forgotten how much pain I was in, because your body just doesn't remember that. But burns are a unique injury. They're very painful. The other side of it was, I was blind for a long time. I very deformed hands, lost half my fingers to amputation. I had lost an unbelievable amount of weight, so I was very weak, which just made physical therapy that much harder. And I was starting from infancy. How do I walk again? How do I put a spoon to my mouth and eat?
This is the part of the story when you talk to me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you started telling me this story, when we were sitting and talking, this is the part of it that blew me away with your attitude now and where you've come. Because the idea of what we see seems to be brutal enough, but having to teach yourself to walk and eat again sounds so foreign to the average adult.
Yeah, well, and it was foreign to me at the time, which maybe in some ways was probably helpful, because I had no choice but to break it all the way down to 1 hour at a time. Okay, for this hour, I have speech therapy. I have to learn how to talk with all these skin grafts. And, back then my mouth wouldn't close. My chin was stuck to my neck. I mean, it was just a disaster. Then I'm blind. Then I am trying to figure out how to hold stuff, with these hands. And so it would literally be an hour at a time. But I had such an incredible support system, first of all. Everybody wanted to see me succeed. And just when you're in the journey, I think it helps. And because I had a completely unknown destination, I had no idea what I was going to achieve, where I was going to get to. I think that helped me a lot in not being in a hurry, just truly 1 hour at a time.
Or setting limits.
And then, well, yeah. I don't know I don't remember having limits.
That's what I mean. If you don't know where you don't know what the expectation is,
exactly.
There's no limits.
Exactly. But I relied heavily, but also had the trust in, like, you people know what you're doing. My doctors, my therapist, my nurses, my family. I'm like, I have enough respect and wherewithal to know I do believe it's easier to go through something than to watch somebody you love go through it. And if you all want to fight for me in the middle of this vulnerability, then I'm all yours. And to swallow that pride is not easy. To lose, being the man of the house, that's more the mental, emotional side. But you're right on the physical side. It was unlimited because I didn't know what I didn't know. And that looking back now, whew.
But let's talk about your family, because I know your family means so much to you. How were they through this? not how were they toward you, but how were they through this?
Well, I think they were remarkable. Obviously, they suffered a lot, and they suffered in ways that I'm not ever going to fully understand because I was in a coma for so long, I was in the hospital so long. But all I know is my wife stuck by me. We'd only been together 4 years. Nobody would have blamed her or disrespected her if we were in our 20s, for God's sakes. And my children had a pretty rough time. 7-year-old daughter, a son who turned 3 when I was in a coma. He really had a tough time. But we stuck together and we tried to figure it out together. And we did it, as a team. You cannot do something like this alone.
How did the children, because they're so young, how did they deal with your appearance?
My daughter she was forced at 7-year-olds to grow up very, very quickly.
Did it worry you?
It didn't worry me on her. I had overwhelming guilt because, why? I know why I put my name on that application. It's something I'm very proud of, and it has carried me through a lot of dark days. I was worried about her in the sense of, this just isn't fair. Not a why me, but why her. Mm-hmm. Then my son, he really was, he would openly say, "You're not my dad." Mm-hmm. And when a 3-year-old says that, everybody has their version of rock bottom, but let me tell you, that's like being slammed right to it. But kids are resilient almost by nature, and once they were able to do their thing and to see where they're, fast forward all these years to see what they're doing and how it actually made them who they are today. And I don't think they would be the incredible human beings they are had they not seen this at that young of an age.
So let's carry from where you just started with you felt guilty because you put your name on the application. But do you think that the way you've handled what's happened to you is an example for them of overcoming unforeseen difficult circumstances?
I do believe that, and I've gotten to watch them have incredible compassion, have incredible fortitude, and they very defensive of me when I would get stared at in the early days. They're very, very protective of Dad. But I also raised them because what helped me so early on was I accepted accountability. I'm not a victim, not going to blame the guy who hit me. I wasn't doing anything wrong. It's not about blaming myself either, but it's just not going to do me any good to do the why me or to do the victim thing. I can name you off so many choices in life over more than a decade that led me into that fire. It wasn't just some guy hitting me at some random tragic moment in time. That's not how life works. We are making decisions today that are going to pop up on us in 5 or 10 years on a collision course with another decision that somebody else is making who knows where right now. And I raised them to understand. A lot of people will talk about, well, I was at a crossroads in life. You're at a crossroads in life about 17 times every day. It's not once or twice in your life. It's every day. Whichever road you go down, you never get to know what was down that other road, so let's not worry about it. But this one that you chose, you have to accept everything that comes with it, good and bad. I mean, successes and all that, enjoy them, be proud. But the failures, you have a part of that too. So I think that really helped them. And I was listening to a great motivational speech this morning, a guy giving a commencement speech, and he said something really beautiful. To the kids, he said, "You know what? I'm not worried about how often you're going to succeed. I'm worried about how few times you're going to fail. That's the important lessons. Is you've got to fail in life, and you've got to have things happen." So, again, looking back now, I'm just filled with gratitude that they actually did have to live with this guy.
But you know what's funny about that is you've maintained what I've learned about you and getting to know you in the times we spent together. You have a hilarious sense of humor. You really do, and you don't seem to take life very seriously in a way. No. But you also self-deprecating humor. You always it's almost like you want to make sure everybody else is at ease the first time they meet you. Is that something you're cognizant of?
I certainly am, and that took some time. I mean, I definitely didn't have a lot to smile or laugh about for quite a few years. I have some great friends, and my family even started a little bit. They'd make fun of me once in a while,
right?
And I do love self-deprecating humor.
And you're the king of it. For people that don't know you,
I can't imagine going through life where you are not laughing or you're taking yourself so serious that, and I know people like that. I'm related to people like that, and it's like that. Man, that's difficult. I love to laugh, and I've tried just about every medication that's been made trying to overcome these injuries, right? They were stuck in me in some way, in a vein, down my throat. Nothing's ever made me feel like just instantly smiling. Mm-hmm. Boom. Like it feels good. So, yeah, I smile and laugh, and I was pretty introverted before my accident. Growing up, I was just kind of this tall, skinny kid wearing glasses, and now I'm certainly not introverted with this appearance, which that even makes me laugh at myself. Like, really, you were worried about stuff in your 20s, and now I'm out there, cruising around the country, walking in and out of airports, sitting in restaurants alone. But, yeah, I don't I just refuse to not find humor in every situation. And it helped me through my own injuries. It helped me when I was a homicide detective to not carry that. Because, again, when I go home to do math homework with my kid, it's not his fault of what I saw and did that day. I chose it. I'm proud of it. It was a beautiful thing to work for victims who couldn't speak for themselves. But I've got to find an outlet, a release, right? And humor is how you do that.
How remarkable in your mind, because to me it's crazy that you went back to work. You were a homicide detective. Now, and for those of us, I'm a huge fan of the first 48, yep. So I'd seen you on the show. Yep. But for you to be able to not just return to work, but return to work in what is seen by many people as the most important job in policing, which is speaking for people that can't speak for themselves. What was that like?
Well, first and foremost, all credit goes to the city of Phoenix and the Phoenix Police Department back then, as they are today. Because I hear horror stories from police officers who are injured all across this country, and they are shunned, pushed away. The city of Phoenix is so supportive of their people. I had become detective certified prior to my accident. I was not shy in telling people my dream and my goal. They gave me an opportunity, and I did not have the skill set. I did not have the time on to do it, but I could help the senior detectives. And once I got into that world, from my sergeant to my lieutenant to my commander to my assistant chief of police, who was Kevin Robinson at the time, in my chain of command, they were so supportive, and I was able to learn. I worked my way up to being the scene investigator. I was only the lead detective on one case in 3 years, and it was the one you saw in the first 48. Yeah. I'm so proud of that, because it was a nothing case. It was an impossible, like, this cannot be solved. And now the TV show says I did it in 2 days. It took 9. Yeah. But I'm still really proud of that. But it is an incredibly honorable job. It helped a lot in my recovery. I have no problem talking about the selfish side. Like, to do something so much bigger than myself really made the pain of what I was going through at times inconsequential. Like, hey, I've got this to take care of, this family, this victim. And I'm so grateful that the Phoenix Police Department allowed that opportunity. And there's a lot of officers out there that have been severely injured that are at work. But your first question about return to work, that was the only thing in my entire recovery process that my wife, my friends, my doctors, everybody said, there's no way.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up.
And I said, I promise you. I said it in the hospital, laying there blind, before I even realized what I looked like or how bad my hands were. And, they weren't mean. They weren't too brutal, but they were like, Jason, just be thankful you're alive. Mm-hmm. The police world is behind you. No, I am a Phoenix police officer. Now I am. And yes, it's a little bump in the road. I don't know when I'm going to overcome it, but I'm going back to work. And let me tell you, the day I did, in a truck by myself, nobody drove me, nobody dropped me off. I drove back to work on that first day.
So when was that? So you were injured in March of 01.
March 26th, and I went back to work on November 12th of 02, 18 months.
Oh, my gosh. Now, have you wrapped your head around that miracle?
I have, just in the sense, there's few things in life that when I'm alone with my thoughts. You know, you lay your head down on the pillow at night, I don't care who you're sleeping next to, you're alone. You're inside of your own mind, and that's when the weight of the world's going to come down, or you might have some anxious thoughts or some, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had thoughts where I'm like, wow, if even my closest friends heard what I'm thinking right now, I'd be committed. We all have that. But there are certain moments that I can lay there and just still be so filled with self-pride. Like, you know what, you said you were going to do it, you did it. Learning how to shoot a gun again. I have to give a lot of credit to my doctors and therapists, what they did, but it was because I simply said, I want to do this, can you help me? And they did. I learned how to shoot a gun again. I learned how to play golf again. I have the greatest career in the world currently, but yes, going back, I've wrapped my mind around it, but I do it in a way that I'm just proud, and it'll help me hit the reset button when I'm maybe not feeling so good.
So let's talk about where you are now. We recently were at an event where you were the Master of Ceremonies for the 100 Club of Arizona.
Yeah.
And in that, for people that don't know, the 100 Club of Arizona has so many different facets, but one of the things they do is they provide monetary benefits and emotional benefits to fallen and injured officers and their families, and I say first responders.
Yeah, all first responders.
And there were a few times during that evening when you got emotional. What is it that motivates you to that point where you can still be that vulnerable in front of strangers and let them see that this is getting to you? You know,
we're talking about my career, and it is public speaking, and so I travel all over the place. I've spoken over the last 13 years, tens of thousands of people. There's very few events, though, that I'll go to, the 100 Club being one of them. When you stand up on that stage and you know that you are representing and being the voice for all the ones who did not get a fire truck in their intersection, all the ones who don't know it yet, but this time next year, they're not going to be here as guests. They're going to be here for having paid them or their family, paying a really high price. What the 100 Club does is remarkable to me. And then, you know, I'm sitting there. I didn't sit down, but right in front of me is Sheriff Mark Lamb and Janelle. Well,
right.
They just lost their son and granddaughter in December. Humbling. Like, are you kidding me? And they're sitting right here. Angela Harrell, who is one of the most remarkable women I've ever known, lost her husband Bruce in 2008. Look what she's done with her life. Now she's the CEO of the 100 Club. We raised a lot of money that night. But I hope what people sense in that raw vulnerability is just after all these years, that's still how much I care about all of you and how much I appreciate what you're doing.
All right, so let's take it to a different area. Okay. Are you really a scratch golfer?
All right, so I will tell you the truth. You ready?
Yeah.
So here's how hard golf was. I lost the state championship my senior year in high school by one stroke to a guy named Brian Contact. Still friends with him. He got to go play at ASU with Phil Mickelson. I went to Phoenix Community College.
Okay.
That's how hard golf was.
Wow.
A lot of good golfers. So I was pretty good. You know, I was scratching in high school. So I go to Phoenix Community College 6 months, and I just realized, yeah, I'm not as good as some of these guys. I'm never going to be on the PGA Tour, and I have a life ahead of me. So join the Air Force. Get out. I'm still playing golf. Thankfully, that was just the one thing I was gifted at. So all the way up until the time of my accident, I was playing at least once a week on my days off with my dad, with some of my friends, and I was a 2 handicap. This is the one thing that I gave up on. The one thing that I even said, Jason, let's be realistic. You're not going to hold on to a skinny little golf club. You're not going to see a ball flying through the blue sky. So I'm injured in 01. I retire in August of 06. And I decided, let's try it. Well, Ping is, they're based right here in Phoenix. They are incredible. And they said, if you want to play golf again, we'll get you there. So working with my limitations with my hands, the eyesight doesn't matter. Somebody else can watch my ball. It was my hands, figuring out the weight, the grips, all this stuff, and a lot of work and practice again. But I always tell people when I'm doing a speech, there's nothing as powerful as a made-up mind. So it doesn't matter if I had fourth-degree catastrophic burns that should have killed me, or if I'm trying to play a silly game. If you make up your mind that you're going to do it, chances are you're going to do it. So 2006, I start, and yes, by 2009, I got back to a 1 handicap. That's the lowest I ever got. I was a 1 handicap for about 6 years, and then it just happened to coincide. My dad passed away. My youngest son, who was born after the accident, got really good at baseball. And here in Arizona, that's 7 days a week.
Sure.
And I love being a dad more than anything. So I stopped playing golf. I just started a year ago. And it drove me crazy because I was not very good. And when I started again, I was a 13. And I'm very proud to tell you that within a year, I'm back down to a 7. So I'm working my way back, but it's going to take some time.
Do you have any concept of how angry that makes me? The best I've ever been is an 11 handicap.
Yeah, and I'm all pissed off that I'm a 7. Yeah. I'm like angry about it.
Right.
I've got to get at least below a 5.
But I think that it's such an indicator for the people that haven't. And this is the reason why we're doing these podcasts, is to get to meet these amazing people in Arizona. You're not amazing because of what happened to you, and I think that when I sit and talk with you, you're just an amazing person to be around. The accomplishments, in spite of what happened to you, should be an inspiration to everybody. And is that what you talk about when you do your public speaking?
That's 100% what I talk about. Obviously, I tell the story, and we got to go down a very dark path, and I share it in a very raw, vulnerable way like I do everything else. But by the end, they understand this did not happen to me. It happened for me. Look at my life right now. Look at what my kids are doing. Look what I'm doing. Never would I have planned on this. But when people say, do you wish you were still a cop? You know what? It's fun to daydream. I think it's healthy. So once in a while, I'll look at my friends and maybe be like, oh, I wonder what I'd look like with my hair going gray. I just turned 50 6 months ago. Would I be a homicide detective right now? These quick daydreams. But I wouldn't trade places with anybody in the world. I don't want to be a cop again. I want to be doing exactly what I'm doing because I love it that much.
I can't thank you enough for doing this. I was so excited for people that didn't know the whole story, or at least we don't even know the whole story, but this much of the story. Right. Thank you for doing this, and I really do appreciate what you're doing. You are an inspiration. I loved our get-together when we hung out with Angela Harrell that day and laughed, because it really showed me even more the sense of humor you have. And thanks for being such an inspiration, because I know it can't always be easy to be on. But every time I've seen you, when someone expects you to be on, you have been. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much. I truly appreciate each and every day of life. I'm living it with gratitude, and to everybody out there who has supported me, your prayers, your support, it's worked. I'm here. I'm as healthy as I've ever been, and I guarantee I'm as happy as I've ever been.
I told you, you're not going to meet a guy more amazing than this here in the state of Arizona. Thanks again, Jason.
Thanks, sir.
All right, man.